Welcome back to our show. 25 years ago this weekend, the Berlin Wall came down, and some of you younger listeners don't realize the importance of that very difficult time in America's history, the world's history, when the Russians kept a division right through Germany between East and West. East Berlin this was a city that was cut right in half. We had to airlift goods in to protect the West Berliners because all of West Berlin was surrounded by Russian-occupied territory. And so there was so much tension, and no one knew how it was going to break down this wall. Families split up from each other. Ronald Reagan made a marvelous speech, probably his best-known speech, when he went to the Berlin Wall. And, well, first of all, John Kennedy was the first that went to the Berlin Wall. And when the wall was up, said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," we are all Berliners, trying to undermine the effectiveness of the wall. And then Ronald Reagan put the coup d'etat on the whole issue when he looked from the Berlin Wall and told Gorbachev, then the premier of Russia, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." It reverberated all over the world. A great deal of unrest took place in eastern Germany and East Berlin, and the wall eventually came down. It happened 25 years ago this weekend. I have a personal story to share with you about the Berlin Wall. Back when I was at school over in Cambridge University over in England, I had the great honor of running on the American track team, the U.S. track team. We ran meets all over Europe, and back then you ran as a small team, and you could go off and run some individual races. Many small communities over in Berlin and throughout Germany had small communities that would hold track meets. They'd like to have a few Americans there to bring in the crowd. I had the honor of handing off the baton to Bullet Bob Hayes, who was then the fastest man in the world, and had a marvelous time traveling in the U.S. team. Well, I broke off and decided to run a track meet in East Berlin. I was asked to do so, had a promoter that was pushing me to come on over and run against who was then the best hurdler in the East, a German fellow. I was going to run against him. I was a pretty good hurdler for America, and so I made the trek over across the wall, had to give my passport. The Russian guards, the East German guards quizzed me at great length about why I was going, looked over my passport, were not a bit friendly. I was a little apprehensive, but I thought, hey, I can go run the track meet. I'm not involved in any international affairs. That time, I didn't have a lot of interest in politics. I was a runner. I was a student and was just trying to go ahead and make a name for myself as a track man, beating who I thought at that point was the best guy in the world. So I went over to East Berlin. I agreed to run the track meet, met the folks over that way, and we ran in the East German Stadium at the time. About 70,000 people were on hand, and of course they were all pulling for the East German, all against me. So we got out and warmed up on the field. I was all ready to go. I think the 100-meter dash just had begun. And my agent who was with me said, he was a Frenchman at the time, who was my agent when I was over there, and he said in a French accent, "Jim, there is an American who wants to see you." And the guy didn't fully identify himself, but he told me he was tied to the American embassy in Germany, in West Berlin, and said, "You can't run this track meet." Now, the gun is going off in 30 minutes. This is one of the biggest meets of my life. I wanted to beat this East German. And, of course, I wanted to run the track meet. He says, "No, you can't run this track meet." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because we don't recognize, America does not recognize East Germany. And if you run this track meet as a member of the United States track team, you will be giving official recognition to the East Germans. That could cause an international incident." I thought that was hogwash. Again, I didn't care about the international politics. I just wanted to run a race. But I also didn't want to undermine any effectiveness my country may have, and I was a proud American, and I felt that if the word was out I should not run, well, maybe I shouldn't run. So very reluctantly, my agent, who spoke German, told the German promoter that the American Jim Brown would not run this race. Well, I picked up my gear and was walking back across the field lengthwise to where the locker room was. And the announcement came on. As I learned later, I didn't understand in German, but I was told later that the American is afraid to run against the German and he's quitting. And In Germany, they don't boo you, they whistle. Whistling is the same as booing. I'll tell you what, if you've never had the experience, and I hope you never do, it was something to see some 70,000 East Germans on their feet, whistling at the top of their lungs, pointing their finger, waving, and making nasty signs to this American. This kid, at the time, this 21-year-old kid, me, making his way across the field in disgust because he could not run the track meet. When I came back to the Berlin Wall, they put you in a little house where they quiz you. They put me there for about 45 minutes just to irritate me. I took out my pen and I wrote some pretty nasty language I wouldn't tell my kids about on the Berlin Wall. I wanted to leave my mark on the Berlin Wall because of what those folks did to me. So it was then, this was 1963. Kennedy made his ascent and his speech about that time, and it took from 1963 to 1987 for the Berlin Wall to finally come down 25 years ago this weekend, and a great thawing of the Cold War, and led us to bringing about some semblance of order in Eastern Europe. Now, of course, we're in a whole quagmire over the Middle East. We go from the frying pan into the fire, but it was quite an experience for me at that time. I just wanted to share that with you. Hey, we'll come back right after this message.